Yeah.
That's a cold walk.
I'll call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call?
President Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Nugent. Trustee Johnson. Trustee Renucci. Trustee Smalley. Thank you.
All right, citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding the comments because it was not part of a publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. Would anybody like to speak during citizen participation? No? Gene? Guys? Okay. All right, I'll close citizen participation and move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second will approve all of the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Grab Jeremy's.
On the consent agenda, on the budget amendments, is that including the police administration? Does that include the zoning compliance officer?
That is no longer a cost in wages. It's in a professional services account. So we didn't even budget for wages for that position because we knew at that point it was a contracted position.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to miscellaneous business. Consideration of joint purchase of a crack filling machine with the town of Troy, the town of East Troy. Anybody have any questions about Jason's memo?
I just had a question. Is there an agreement that's going to be drawn up for like maintenance, storage, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think we'd do something similar to what we did for the bucket truck, and I know that was before your time, but yes, I definitely see us, if this gets approved, drawing something up so all three municipalities are on the same page.
You don't foresee a malfunction like we did with the brine truck, right? Because there won't be as much need on that?
No, so this is something a little different. Not everybody's gonna need it at the same time like you would the brine tank. This we can all kind of work with one another and schedule it. And that's kind of the beauty with owning one, is it really gives us the ability to schedule our crack filling as the summer goes along. And if we have more time, we can do additional.
That sounds like a great idea. I'll move to approve the joint purchase of the crack filling machine for the town of Troy and town of East Troy.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to the Highway 20 project, consideration of the town of East Troy intergovernmental agreement for the cemetery sidewalk along Highway 20. Anybody have any questions about that route or the agreement that was drawn up by our attorneys?
Has the town approved that yet?
I'm not sure. I did send it to them last week. I was gonna take a peek to see if it was on their agenda tonight, and I forgot to do that, so I don't know the answer to that.
I'll make a motion to approve the IGA.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to do it whether or not the town wants to participate. Is that the point? Is that what we're basically understanding?
So the DOT wants an agreement in place to make sure that someone is going to maintain this. They're asking the town to sign a maintenance agreement, so obviously it's gonna be in the town's best interest to make sure that, you know, we're gonna be the ones benefiting from it, Village Properties. But if you look in the agreement, we have put provisions in there to ask the town to enforce their current ordinances, for snow removal, so that, you know, the adjacent property owner will be liable to do it.
40, this was a verbal yes from the town. They had a conversation at their board meeting about this and agreed upon it, but this is a part of what the state is requiring us to do, is to have this intergovernmental agreement. So that's why this is in front of us now.
Okay, I mean, as long as we've gotten a positive affirmation from the town, that's fine. I just didn't want to have us in it, and then the town says, well, no, we never agreed to that.
And if that happens, then obviously I'm gonna come back to you guys and inform you of that, and then we'll have to negotiate, I suppose.
The village will end up cleaning it.
My hope is that we don't have to maintain that portion because we have enough, other stuff to take care of. So again, this is an ordinance that they already have in place, and we're just simply asking them to enforce their ordinance.
All right, we've got a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, what's going on with the trees?
Do you want to take this? or you-
No, go ahead if you want.
Well, you see there, I started cutting some down. So, do we have I guess, can we pull up a map? Yeah, well,
Yes.
they started some, and you can see that the electric poles are out there. Oh, you could hear it? Okay, so, yeah, here we go. While we pull this up, I guess, so we'll talk from west to east along the project. So we'll start about Thomas Drive there. So, so there's, as Jason, what were you calling it, the boulevard or?
Yep, so that's what we've always referred to it as the frontage boulevard. And I think essentially what's gonna happen here is there'll be probably one tree in that entire boulevard that makes it through this project.
So the reason is not due to safety. So they're gonna drop that hill, and by regrading, they're basically going to impact the root systems of all those trees. And so if it doesn't kill them, it's gonna kill them in 2 to 3 years. Now, they're ash trees, right?
Couple of them are ash trees, correct, that we have been treating, and that's why they're still alive.
Right, so, now, the state was very amenable to compensating us for this, even though it's technically on their property, because it's right on, if you zoomed in, I mean, it's hard to tell in GIS, you can't get close enough. It's like right on the line. And so if we replant and plant in the village portion, and we'll plant a species that we don't have to treat, yes, not a great solution, but a solution better than no trees whatsoever. So that's that portion there. And that also includes coordination with We Energies on anything that needs to be adjusted due to the line going through there. So that was my number one concern, is that we would just gonna have nothing.
And so we did get back to DOT with, I think, 3 different species of tree, right? And they have said that they will allow us to be involved in selection of the location of those trees. It'll be part of the road project.
So, any questions on that before we move east? Okay, so if we go to East Drive, okay, the resident who lives there at the corner of 20 and East Drive, whole bunch of trees there, and those, if you go by there, I don't know when they did it, I noticed yesterday that they were down. Yeah, so those, there was a lot of, that's a relatively newer property owner for that property, and the state had already been in negotiation of purchasing right-of-way from him. So they had lots of conversation there. It's kind of an unusual setup there. And that's where we've had some problems, you know, that's where that crosswalk issue is and everything else. So those needed to go for safety reasons, especially trying to turn out of East Drive there. So we talked at length about whether, you know, this is gonna be an issue, and no, they've been in lots of communication with him, and We Energies has as well, so.
Are
All right, if we move further east to in front of the church,
And just one quick note on the boulevard area, we did send out a letter to some property owners adjacent to the boulevard. And I did receive one phone call back, but it wasn't about these trees. It was in regards to some arborvitaes that are planted in that boulevard, which are not going away.
okay, there's a oak tree that's there, and it is, I think I think that's it right there, I think. And so if you drive by there, you can see it's been side trimmed in the past for We Energies. They're gonna try, but Asplund was not real confident that this is gonna be long-lived. And you could, it's pretty, it's been hacked on a good amount. So they have sent letters to the church. And if you look, the church has plenty of room, so should they need to, it's also in the right of way. It's not on their property. So if they want to replant, it's a shame to lose an old oak tree like that, but I mean, it's problematic even without the road work.
Yeah, you usually have to do a limbo when you walk down that through
As
that
I
area.
said the same thing. I said, well, I'm not sure people who walk up and down that sidewalk are going to be too disappointed. But so unfortunately, that one will probably go, but we might get lucky. All right, proceeding east. All of these trees are going to go. And there's a number of reasons, and so Tim and Jason, if I forget something here. So it's not just due to speed. So, we've talked about, well, what if we, drop the speed to 30 or 25, down through here? It has to do with the diameter of the tree, the number of feet off the road, but also with the fact that there's a railroad going through there. There's other considerations for these portions right here in this island. So it's a number of different items. Now, what we came to was, as I said, well, what if we wanted to replant? Are there different type of species and whatnot? They would probably frown upon replanting any type of trees, but we could explore at our cost other types of landscaping, and we would obtain a permit to go do that.
What was the connection to the railroad, did I say?
Can you?
Yeah, I think it's 300 feet within each side of the railroad tracks.
They weren't budging on this one, and there was no compensation discussion. Okay. Moving east, we just talked about the sidewalk. You see there's some trees up there by the cemetery. Those should remain, right, Tim?
Correct, because the curb's moving.
The other trees in these islands are going to have to go too. Again, same comment about, permitting. Do we want to look at other types of landscaping and things like that? And if that property develops there between the Dollar General and the Shell, there may be more cross traffic there anyway. So we'll have to look at that. That takes us up to the last thing, which is at the corner. This is town property, or I guess in the town, I shouldn't say town property, it's private property, but these trees there, and there are some that will have to go down there, but that's not technically within the village. The reason for the gotta do it now is there is a new federal regulation about cutting some of these trees due to an endangered bat. Long-eared bat. And they want these cuts for these trees between October and April 1st. So that's why let's get out and get this done before we get to April 1st, because they're migratory. So I'm going to pause there, and before we talk, that's phase one of the project. That's this year. So I was happier than when I went into the meeting. I expected to get nothing coming into the meeting. We got something.
Anything going on east of this point?
Anything else on this? Jason, did I forget anything, Tim? And Jason did a lot of real fast wrangling to get a lot of people on a phone call on a Friday morning. I want to thank him for that. This is where it got a little testy. There's really not a lot of trees out this way. But there is a sign. And they really don't like that sign. And they don't like it there. And we were kind of running out of time on the call. This is within the 2024 portion. So I said, we're going to have to talk more about this. I'm not.
There's several signs in that area.
Well, that was the part we were coming up at the end of our hour, and we'd gotten compensation for trees, so I wasn't going to push the issue at this conversation. But we do need to have a conversation about that with them, and along with the fact that, well, in general, there's a bazillion signs out there. How many signs do we need anyway?
And didn't we get permission to put that sign there previously, and now they're changing their mind, it sounds like?
We did, and I shared that with them because they said, well, you never did get a permit for it to begin with. And I said, well, that's not entirely true because we asked before we put the sign in, and here's documentation of that. And they just didn't seem to care about that. Well, that wasn't the right person to approve that, or, whatever.
So we got permission just from the wrong person apparently, but like we're supposed to know that. So.
That's the unfortunate part here is that the sign actually does have to come out because there's a storm sewer pipe below it, and that's being replaced. So that was, I think, really what triggered this, and then they said, well, and you can't put it back.
Well, is the issue though that there's no breakaway posts on it in case a car hits it?
They do not have this, because I asked them, I said, and we're going to go and need to look, and that's why I said, let's give this some time. They claim there's not another state highway where they have ever allowed this. I disagree with that.
There are multiple state highways that I have identified that allow for these signs that have recent renovations. Highway 100 is one of them. Muskego has a thoroughfare that's a state highway that runs through it that has signage exactly like this throughout it. This is ridiculous that we're not being allowed to be able to do this. There has been conversations between Jason and the person that's in the head of this whole thing that has identified clear view areas. And we measured it out. We are within that right-of-way for clear view. Well, then they think of a different excuse of why we can't have it. So I think this is a point that we need to battle on. This is something that we can't give up on. This is a signage, a greeting sign into our community we invested a lot of time, a lot of money on, and not something we want to give up on.
I agree, and that's why I said, does this thing have to come out this year? And the answer was no. So I'm not in any rush to make a change. I was more worried about they were firing up the chainsaws and everything else. Let's get that figured out. So we have that. Now, last thing, if we go further east, past the airport, you may need to zoom out. Keep going. Okay, if you zoom in right past the grass runway to the east of it, yeah, right there. You will see there is it looks like an abandoned entry point there. We are talking about through the ALP, the Airport Layout Plan, which finally got awarded to Strand, but still a lot of work to do. The Airport Advisory Committee has talked about, can we get approval to have, if we do more hangars on the south side, to have another entrance to the airport off of 20. And their answer was yes, you would formally abandon this and move the cut down to there. So I thought that was positive. They had no real pushback on that question. I think the other thing is I went through there on Google Maps, and there's a lot of shrubbery and other things, so it's not like you're moving a lot. You're not moving a pickup truck in there.
I really had hoped that through this update of the ALP, we would determine, just make sure that we want to move that entrance before we do it. But it seems as if that's moving slow, and I don't know that we're gonna wanna wait around for that. We're gonna wanna try to get, now this portion as well will be in '24, so we do have a little bit of time to make that decision. I just wanna make sure we're making the right decision, that's all.
So again, I want to thank Tim and Jason being on the call, organizing that, and that's the best we could do for now. More to do on the sign, for sure.
The other thing I just want to point out as far as the signage, we had planned for some wayfinding signs, which we now have and are going to go up in spring. I don't know how that's going to be affected by this, as far as the DOT's eyes and the signage we want to do that we had planned. So stay tuned.
I say we hold off on that for a little bit and find that contact that Lori knows.
And Tim, you're over by Muskego, aren't you? Your office? Yeah, so, you happen by there, grab some pictures for us. And
What road are you talking about? Because I think those are county highways.
are they county or?
Racine is county, Janesville is county.
Okay, and then what about Highway 100 is state though, right?
Yeah.
And there is plenty of evidence of signage across that area.
Well, the other thing too is if somebody's approved this in the past, they were an agent on behalf of the state. So, if there's documentation to support it, we need to continue to work down that path.
Yeah, and we started down that at the meeting the other day, and it kind of quickly got shut down. So I don't know if maybe that is, the route we need to go, but.
So the negative is their response, they shut it down and they said, you didn't talk to the right person. The positive is the supposed right person was also not on this call. So we still need to talk to that person.
All right, moving on.
Just don't lose that email.
All right, consideration of multi-use trail Phase 2 funding grant proposal. Any questions about Tim's proposal?
Thank you for the quick turnaround on that.
I had a couple of questions, of course. The first thing I scribbled down here was if we had an idea of what kind or amount of funds are we looking at? Costs?
Wasn't that one that TAP fund had an 80-20?
So there's the two proposals. The TAP fund is 80-20. Downside with the TAP, you have to do more of a DOT design, so there's more design work involved. But it's 80-20 funding, which is nice. And then the stewardship is the 50-50 grant. And as far as total dollars, we're looking at probably $800,000 to $900,000 in construction costs. So you're looking at either 80% of that or 50%.
And then that portion divided up. Remember, divided up amongst multiple municipalities, not all the village.
No, we're just talking about the Highway 120, the Phase 2 of the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
path
on
we
the
did.
wrong.
Yep.
So is this for both grants, or are we applying for both of them?
That was our thought process, was to go after both, because we don't know which way we're gonna go. The stewardship grant is the one that we applied for in the past, and were awarded for about 5 minutes, and then take the money taken away. So I think that's a good one. I mean, and frankly, I think we were really, really close, and I think we're probably due for that. But the TAP grant is what we're hearing is they have a lot of extra funding available, so I think both are worthwhile to go after.
And so we're looking at connecting the multi-use from Honey Creek all the way down to where it is currently.
Correct.
And $800,000 for a blacktop.
A big portion of the cost is getting underneath the freeway.
You gotta go under two bridges there, obviously, eastbound, westbound.
Either retaining walls or barrier walls or some other modifications to the state highway.
I had a question in regards to the plan, the original plan that your firm sent, had the walkway crossing over by Jensen's property and then continuing south. And we were gonna have to then install poles for lighting. but if we kept it on the west side and continued on down towards Honey Creek, there are poles already existing all the way down.
Yeah, and you and I met and talked about it, and I think we have not done any further research into which way to design, just because we want to get the funding in first.
Well,
But as far as the layout goes, yeah, we would still have flexibility. We're gonna have some exhibits that show we're getting from point A to point B. The actual details of that will be figured out once we get into design.
Well, that was gonna be my question, I guess, and so that, in other words, we don't show them this Plan A and said, okay, that's what your funding is for, and if we decide to move to the other side of the street, they're gonna say, oh, no, you don't get your funding unless it goes on this side.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be the case.
How much was it? $2,000, $2,500 for a pole?
For a light pole, yes.
Yeah, and you're talking, we'd have to probably put in at least 10, 15 of them.
At either half the cost or 20% of the cost.
And this is gonna come from fund balance if we approve it, since it wasn't budgeted.
That was gonna be my comment. Nothing's been budgeted for here. Just wanna make sure.
I will make a motion to approve the grant proposal quote from Lynch and Associates to be paid for from fund balance.
Do we need to specify which grant we're going after, or both?
I think we should go for both. My motion will be for both.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, salt shed, I'm guessing that's you.
Yeah, so I wanted to run an idea by you guys and see what kind of support it gets for the construction of a salt shed for the village of East Troy. 40, do you know, has the village ever had a salt shed? I know the town salt shed was in the village, but has the village ever owned one?
No, we used to have a pile of salt that, over by the old treatment plant that was covered with a tarp, but
Okay.
once Mr. Koopman came in and proposed putting the county salt shed out, we worked a deal out with them that we could go and use the salt there, pay for it, and then we wouldn't have to go all the way to Elkhorn.
Sure. And so we still have that letter, right, from the county. However, what that letter says is that we can take salt from the salt shed. Doesn't say we can bring it back. It doesn't say we can use the salt shed as our own, which we have been doing since about 2009. 2009 is about when we threw the switch from sand salt to pure salt. That's also about the time Mike Miller came on board. Previous to that, we had been getting our salt. We were using sand salt, sand. We were getting the salt from the salt shed, taking it to the sewer plant, mixing it with sand in the drying beds, the sludge drying beds. And so that's not a option any longer for two reasons. We don't have capacity, and secondly, it's not a very responsible place to store salt, since those under drains go right back to the head of the sewer plant, and as we read in the chlorides report later, that's just not good business. So, starting in about, like I say, 2009 is when we started using pure salt and using that salt shed more like our own, is what I'll say. And what we do, just so that the board's aware, we'll go out there and we'll load our trucks with salt. There's actually a scale on the loader. On the county's loader, the county allows us to use their loader. And then we go in a storm. Let's just say we put 10 tons on a truck. I'll use round numbers. And in that round, that truck uses 2 tons of salt. We go back, we load 2 more tons of salt on there, so we have a full load again. If we see a clear span of weather coming, we'll dump the trucks back off. Not good to leave the trucks loaded for corrosion reasons and just the added weight. So in there lies the problem, is when we dump it back off, their concern is that we're not dumping off exactly what we took in the full load. And there's, you know, there's definitely some room for error there. So we've kind of figured out a short-term workaround. We're going to take the trucks out to gravel pit on Bowers Road and weigh them when they're full, take them back, dump them, and then go weigh the trucks again so that we know what they are empty, so that we know specifically what we dumped off. The county has verbally agreed to that with the understanding that we've tried to figure out a better plan. So, today, we don't have anywhere responsible to dump salt. And I don't like being in that position. So I think we should look into building something, that we don't have to depend on others. Now, there's definitely still value to this county agreement, and that's the other thing is I'd love to get this into a formal MOU rather than an agreement from 2000, than a letter from 2002. They have said they're still willing to allow us to get our salt at the salt shed, just not, again, treat it as our own.
It would save you traveling all the way to the county in Elkhorn to get it, correct?
Correct. And so then what we could do is, we could go load 4 trucks from the county salt shed, and then after the storm is over, we could dump them off back in our salt shed, and then, we would use up that salt before we go get more.
Are you proposing also to go back to mixing with sand?
No.
What type of infrastructure would you need, Jason, other than a building?
So actually Benchmark, the contractor down here, just constructed a salt shed, and I went and took a look at his, and it's essentially a pole barn. Now, it's got a high ceiling because you gotta be able to tip the trucks back in the building. And what they did is they created a concrete bunker inside of it with those concrete jersey barriers. Actually, it's, in the front it's 4, in the back it's probably 10. So, obviously a concrete floor. I would do this bare bones. I mean, no electricity. I don't think there's any need for that. Obviously on existing property, down at the sewer plant somewhere where it would be secure. So, and I haven't done a lot of legwork on this yet because I really wanted to feel you guys out first to see if it's something we're interested in.
So the one thing that the building of that structure, because of what the nature of what you're storing in it, is usually pretty costly materials. And about a year ago, I had a conversation with somebody from the county that was asking if we would buy their salt shed. Where are they at with that right now?
That was actually proposed to me a couple of years ago. It wasn't officially proposed. It was a back of the napkin, hey, do you think the village would ever be interested? And I'm like, yeah, we'd probably be interested. Since then, strategy has changed on that because now they're storing all their brine there as well. So they won't want to let go of that satellite site.
Well, we'd allow them with a simple agreement like ours from 2002, identifying they could utilize that site as long as it's ours.
I think they've also realized that they're not going to completely get away from granular salt, which is the same thing. I feel that same way as well. I mean, we're going to continue to grow our brine. I mean, it's done some awesome stuff, but I don't think we're ever going to be completely away from granular.
Where do you get your brine?
We purchase it from Walworth County.
From the satellite?
No, they deliver it. They deliver it, yeah. So we put those bulk takes in this year, and they'll bring us 5,000 gallons at a time.
Okay.
Is there, is there an opportunity to partner with the towns?
I did have a conversation with the DPW of Town of Troy, who initially said, yeah, I've got room. The challenge there is we're right back in the same situation. If we do that, we're relying on someone else, and if they get upset or something else happens, then we're out there because we'd still need to keep village sand, town salt separate, and so we're really in the same situation then. Because that's the other thing about it, is it needs to be, for these guys, it needs to be useful, it needs to be efficient, instead of driving all the way out to Troy Center to get salt. I don't know that that's the best use of our time.
No, that's my concern, or having them come all the way into the village. I mean, what's your, I guess, back of the napkin guess on a cost?
75 grand,
Does that include the concrete?
yeah.
Are you wanting to do it, I'm assuming, this year?
Well, that would be ideal. It would be to have this thing in place, for next winter. That seems a little aggressive, but again, we already have property. We'll have to try to figure out where that would work so we don't put it somewhere where it's gonna affect the future treatment plant upgrade or something like that, but that would be ideal to have it in place for next winter. Obviously, there's an approval process, site plans, things like that, and I'm not sure how long all that stuff's gonna take, but I've got a pretty good idea of, as far as what we would do, very similar to what Benchmark just constructed, so I would probably start with that and go from there.
My thought is whether you did it this year or we have a capital project for it for next year, you're gonna have to price it out one way or the other. So, I mean, I think we just have to see the details of what it would look like,
And I do feel like if we were definitely, serious about moving towards a salt shed ourselves, that the county would acknowledge that, realize it, and work with us. If it couldn't happen in '23, I think as long as they see we're trying and want to do something, I think they would work with us.
So by work with us, you mean just taking those trips to the scale on Bowers?
Exactly. That's kind of our workaround at this point. They've, again, verbally told me that, okay, we'll allow that, so.
I mean, if they see us getting RFPs for building and construction and things and
I think it's a simple email to them that say, hey, I've got some support and we're gonna begin to look into this thing. I think that gets us certainly through the rest of this year, and, they understand what it takes to do a project like this. It doesn't happen overnight, so that's kind of my gut feeling, but I think they would work with us.
Do you feel comfortable with Matt's proposal, the idea that maybe we push this off a year to make sure it's part of the capital budget?
Absolutely. I agree with what you're saying. Either way, we got to start to pull numbers together. So, I can do that, and who knows, not likely, but maybe it'll be less than I'm, forecasting. But until I start to look into that, I won't know. So I can bring you back, I can do some research, try to figure out a site, and try to get some better numbers and come back to you with that if that's what you want.
I think that would work best for us, it fits into our regular budget cycle, yada, yada,
Okay, that's what I'll do. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on to update direction to staff regarding pursuing grant funding for design engineering of a bike trail from East Troy to McWanago. Did everybody read Eileen's memo? So everybody's clear on what that meeting was about? Eileen?
Okay, so I won't repeat the memo itself, but I do have new information today. Kirsten Finn from the Wisconsin Bike Federation has been very helpful. She had reached out to Linda Fink, who was the engineer that was originally working with Joe and Mary on this project when they initially spearheaded the project. So Kirsten had reached out to her to get some additional information, and Linda is very knowledgeable in grant funding and the design and construction of these bike trails. The most recent information is, and I need to share this with other entities that were at the meeting, they are not aware of this yet because we just received this just a couple hours before this meeting, but they're recommending that we actually go for a feasibility grant than design and engineering. She said a couple of reasons. WSDOT rarely funds design and engineering alone without construction. You would have to have the agreement in place with the railroad before going for design and engineering, which we don't think is possible. And she also had cautioned that a standard DOT TAP contract is for 2 years from the executed agreement to construction. So she recommended applying for a feasibility grant to help narrow the design focus and get an accurate project costs. But she did say this, looking at the March 24th application, there's no feasibility option, so she's gonna follow up with WSDOT. So some of the timing push was related to the trustee of the Crucible Materials Environmental Response Trust coming up with new uses for the property and knew about this effort for the bike trail, and he would be willing to dedicate the easements for that. But the other part of the push was this timing for this grant deadline. So I'm gonna await more information from Linda, but I was generally looking for board direction, whether there was support to pursue these grant funds. But I would say at this point, I probably will just wait and come back once we get an update from Linda, because it doesn't like that March 24th grant deadline is gonna be applicable any longer, so.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but in Holtz Drive going through McGuanago from 83 going around through the industrial past their sewer plant, going up towards Highway ES, they put in a new trail along there, and I was kind of impressed on how they did that. They had to do a lot of earth moving over there.
Thanks for the update, Eileen. Moving on to ordinances, resolutions, ordinance 2023-01, creating a code of ethics.
I will make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-01.
I will second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to reports. Municipal Court from December. Hope nobody has any questions. Jeremy's not here. How about Booth Lake minutes from 12/21? Administrators report, lengthy report.
I'm really upset about any department went $700 or more over budget. Come on.
Any question on the chlorides report?
I
That was
have-
another, oh, no, we're already past, I'm sorry.
Sorry, kid. You can't see me because of the screen. Yeah, sorry. I guess my first question was on the second page in the population, excuse me, on the administrator's report. There was a corrected total for our population in the village. And it's, what was it, 4989?
So it's not a correction. It's actually, so every 10 years, we get the census number, and then in between years, there are estimates made by the Department of Administration based on building permits pulled.
Well, my question is, in regards to that number, is that I know, for some reason, I'm thinking, when we hit the 5,000 or more, there's a few things that change. And we're getting pretty close to that, are we not?
So one of the things that changes that has been talked about frequently is Police and Fire Commission, but that is based on census numbers. So you would not have to form a police commission until we actually have our next census.
And liquor licenses too, right? The amount, isn't that towards that?
That figures into quota calculations that Lori does, and 5,000 may not be the actual number. She reviews that on a regular basis, because it's like every 500 license, or in population or something for certain
Yeah,
ones.
based on the population increase, when it changes to an additional 500, we can gain another license. But it's based off of a calculation from a long time ago, and so we have, it's not a set number, it's based off of that original number, so
It's gonna have to be reviewed and adjusted possibly?
we review it every January because we need to fill out a quota sheet.
I'm just curious, did the police catch the person with that check in the village?
No, unfortunately, they did not.
I'm happy our controls caught that, and we got our money back.
Chloride report, another long one. Tom did a great job on this. Looks really good. I mean, wow.
He was gonna be here tonight, but he got sick over the weekend, so.
Any questions on the dam removal update?
I guess it's warm again.
Yeah, this winter isn't helping that. There was some movement, though. Scott pointed out they were out there Sunday working on some cleanup, so.
does it look like they're gonna get that final stone put in place where they need to?
Some of that may happen yet this winter, but the weather's not really conducive. On the south side, I think they're gonna be able to get in there because there's kind of the old dam portion where it's actually very solid ground. So up near the 120 area, they think they'll be able to get in there and do some of that yet this year. They're waiting for a little bit of break in weather, but they can get into that area near the south. The other portions further west are a little bit tougher as far as the grounds go.
I mean, it's only gonna be in the 40s this week, so.
Are they,
Well, but it is gonna get cold at night, some of these nights, so that will help, but.
are they gonna get that, container out of there?
So the container, not until the project is done. They did clean up some more stuff over the weekend, but the container still has some, what do you say, grass seed and mulch and stuff, so there's still needed materials in there.
That steel ring that's sitting in front of it, are they gonna get rid of that?
That's gonna go, their plan was to cut it in half, I think, and haul it out. So, yes, that is going away.
If we
I
can't
think
get him
then
to
the
do
only
it-
thing left will be the container.
If we can't get him to take that big steel ring out of there pretty soon, can we just call Joas and have him come get it?
Yeah. But he did tell us the other day, actually, I think that's part of the reason there was a machine sitting there, I think there still is, was to load that ring, so.
And then do we need to talk at some point about the fence there? You know, we were just talking about the grant for the trail, if we've got more people walking there, or are we still waiting for them to finish some of this work?
Yeah, he still has punch list work to do right where the old driveway was to the dam that is gonna reshape that bank a little bit. So, once that's done, then we'll evaluate what the needs are there.
All right, make a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 1985 1E for the purpose of conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Cell tower lease and TID development.
Second up.
Roll call.
President Seeger.
Yes.
Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Johnson. Trustee Nugent. Trustee Renucci. Trustee Smalley. Thank you.